He called her a slur, shoved her girlfriend against a wall, and challenged her to a fight right there in the parking lot outside a Phoenix sports bar, screaming that people like her needed to be taught a lesson. And what this 6'2" drunk man did unknow was that the 5'6" woman he was threatening had just won her third professional MMA championship 2 weeks earlier and was about to teach him a lesson about consequences he'd never forget. Her name was Casey Rivera. She was 28 years old, and what happened in those next 90 seconds would be captured on 3 cell phone cameras, go viral with 40 million views, and spark a national conversation about when self-defense becomes justice and whether humiliating a bigot makes you as bad as them or exactly what they deserved. Casey Rivera had been fighting her entire life, first against a father who'd kicked her out at 16 for being gay, then against a system that told her women didn't belong in combat sports, then against every opponent who thought her size meant she was weak. She'd trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since 17, added Muay Thai at 19, and by 23 was fighting professionally in the women's featherweight division. She worked as a personal trainer at a Scottsdale gym during the day and fought on regional cards at night. Her record was 15 wins and 2 losses, both losses in her first year. Her striking was technical. Her submission skills were elite level. And anyone who watched her fight knew that underestimating Casey Rivera based on appearance was a mistake you only make once. On a Saturday night in March, Casey had gone to Rookie S Bar and Grill with her girlfriend Maya Chen to watch a UFC pay-per-view event. Maya was a nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital. They'd been dating 2 years. The bar was packed, mostly men, mostly loud, typical sports bar where every screen showed a different game. Casey and Maya found seats at the bar, ordered wings and beer, settled in to watch fights. They weren't hiding their relationship, just 2 people occasionally holding hands between rounds. About 3 fights in, Casey noticed a group of 4 men at a table behind them getting progressively louder. They were mid-30s, wearing affliction shirts, the kind of guys who thought watching UFC made them fighters. One of them, later identified as Trevor Walsh, kept making comments, at first just obnoxious yelling at screens. Then, as they got drunker, the comments shifted. Casey heard one say something about the dykes at the bar. Maya tensed. Casey squeezed her hand and said, "Ignore them. Not worth it." The bartender Linda walked over to Trevor's table and said she needed them to keep it down or leave. Trevor said they were just having fun. Linda told Casey and Maya she'd called the manager. Casey said they'd just finish watching and leave. When the main event started, Trevor stood up, clearly drunk, and walked toward the bar. Casey watched him in peripheral vision, instinct telling her this was escalating. He walked up to Maya, leaned in too close, and said, "You know what you need? A real man to show you what you're missing." Maya said, "Leave us alone." Trevor laughed and said, "I'm trying to help you, save you from this lifestyle choice." Casey turned to face Trevor and said calmly, "Walk away." Trevor said, "Well, what? You gonna do something?" Casey said, "I'm asking you politely to leave us alone." Trevor said, "You dykes think you're tough, but you're just confused." Casey stood up. She was 5'6", maybe 135 pounds, wearing jeans and a fitted t-shirt. Trevor was 6'2", probably 220, drunk on his size and alcohol. He looked down and laughed. He said, "You really want to do this, little girl?" Casey said, "I want you to walk away before you embarrass yourself." Trevor's friends were yelling encouragement. The bartender was on the phone. Other patrons had phones out recording. Trevor made his first mistake. He reached out and shoved Maya, pushing her back against the bar hard. Maya stumbled. Casey stepped between them instantly, body language changing from civilian to fighter. Trevor said, "Now you want to fight? Let's go outside. I'll teach you a lesson." Casey said, "I don't want to fight you. I want you to leave." Trevor grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the door. Casey pulled free easily and said, "Don't touch me." Trevor, furious that a woman had escaped his grip, pulled his arm back and threw a punch at Casey's face. What happened next lasted maybe 90 seconds, but would be analyzed frame by millions online. Casey slipped a punch, small head movement that made Trevor's fist sail past her ear. She didn't counter, still giving him a chance. Okay? Trevor threw another punch, wild and telegraphed. Casey slipped that too. Someone yelled, "World Star." Casey said, "Last chance. Walk away." Trevor said, "I'm going to beat the gay out of you." He threw a third punch with all his weight. Casey didn't slip this time. She stepped inside, caught his arm, executed a perfect judo throw using his momentum. Trevor hit the ground hard, air knocked out. He tried to get up, and Casey put him in a rear naked choke, cutting off blood flow to the brain, held it just long enough for Trevor to feel himself losing consciousness. She released it and said calmly into his ear, "This is where you stay down." Trevor, still drunk and stupid, tried to swing from the ground. Casey controlled his arm, transitioned to an armbar, hyperextended his elbow, just enough that he screamed. She released that too, said, "I can do this all night, or you can stop." Trevor stopped. Casey stood up, stepped back, hands up, showing she was done. Trevor lay on the ground, groaning, humiliated. The bartender said, "Police are on the way." Casey said, "Good. I want to press charges for assault." She showed the red mark where Trevor had grabbed her. Multiple witnesses and recordings showed Trevor throwing the first punch. This was self-defense. Police arrived 6 minutes later. They separated everyone, took statements. Videos showed everything clearly. Trevor had initiated contact, assaulted Maya first, thrown multiple punches at Casey. Casey had defended herself using minimal necessary force. Given multiple chances to stop, used controlled submissions instead of strikes. One officer recognized Casey, said, "Aren't you that MMA fighter?" Casey said, "Yes, sir." The officer gestured at Trevor, sitting on the curb with hands zip-tied. Trevor was arrested for assault and disorderly conduct. Casey and Maya gave statements and were free to go. Someone uploaded the video to Twitter that night with the caption, "Homophobe picks fight with woman at bar, doesn't realize she's a pro MMA fighter, gets absolutely destroyed." By Sunday morning, it had 3 million views. By Monday, it was on every sports news site. ESPN ran a segment. MMA Media interviewed Casey. Trevor's identity was revealed, and his employer fired him. His face became a meme. Screenshots of him in that submission hold were captioned with the talk, "Shit, get hit, and find out." Casey became overnight famous. Her Instagram went from 3,000 followers to 400,000 in a week. Sponsors reached out. A major MMA promotion offered her a contract. She was invited on podcasts, talk shows, news programs. Casey told the story honestly, said she hadn't wanted to fight, had given Trevor every opportunity to walk away, but once he'd assaulted Maya and attacked her, she defended herself. She said the video wasn't about being tough. It was about consequences, about how people like Trevor think they can intimidate without pushback. But not everyone saw it that way. Some said Casey used excessive force, that as a trained fighter she should have left or waited for police. Some said she'd humiliated Trevor unnecessarily. Conservative commentators said this was a violent left-wing activist attacking people for different beliefs. Trevor's lawyer claimed Casey was the aggressor. The district attorney reviewed the case and declined to file charges against Casey, citing clear self-defense. Trevor sued Casey in civil court for medical costs and emotional distress. His elbow had been hyperextended. He claimed PTSD from the assault, that he couldn't work because of public humiliation. Casey's lawyer filed a countersuit for the assault on Maya and Casey. Both cases were eventually settled out of court. People familiar with the settlement said Casey paid nothing, and Trevor dropped his suit in exchange for Casey not pursuing hers. The viral fame lasted about 2 months. Casey signed with a major MMA promotion, fought twice more that year, won both fights, is currently ranked number 5 in her division. She uses her platform to talk about LGBTQ rights, self-defense training for women and queer people, standing up to bullies. Maya still works at the hospital. They got engaged last year. Trevor deleted all social media and moved to a different state. Last anyone heard, he was working under the table because no legitimate employer would hire him after the video. Casey says she doesn't regret what happened, but doesn't celebrate it. She says Trevor forced her hand and she did what she had to do, but she wishes she'd never been in that position. She wishes people like Trevor would just let queer people exist without feeling threatened. She wishes violence wasn't sometimes the only language bullies understand. But she also knows that video of Trevor on the ground has probably prevented 100 other Trevors from starting something with someone they thought was an easy target. So here's the question for you. If you were in Casey's position, trained fighter, and someone assaulted you and your partner after calling you slurs, would you have responded the way she did? Would you have used your training or held back? Okay. And do you think Casey humiliating Trevor on camera was justice or excessive? Should trained fighters have a responsibility to walk away even when being assaulted? Drop your answer in the comments because the ethical debate about this is still ongoing, okay? And if this story made you feel something, hit subscribe because we tell stories about real people facing impossible situations and making split-second decisions that define who they are. What would you have done differently? Tell us below.